Hello everyone, my name is Sarang Tilak and today we are here to discuss the topic Geetarahasya and its relevance in today's world. Before beginning with the discussion, let us set the outline for today's session. We will consider how Geetarahasya appeals to the three different aspects of our mind. Firstly, we'll see how it appeals to our practical mind. Secondly, to our analytical mind. And thirdly, to our spiritual mind. Now, before beginning with our discussion about Geetarahasya, let me speak a little bit about the great freedom fighter Lokmanya Tilak. Today marks the 103rd death anniversary of Lokmanya Gangadhar Tilak. As we all know, he was one of the most eminent freedom fighters and one of the most recognized names internationally about Indian freedom movement. He was called the father of Indian unrest by the British. That is how much they regarded his efforts as detrimental to their rule of India. Other than his political and freedom fighting career, very few of us know that he was also an adept astrologer, an avid astronomer, and a fantastic mathematician. He used to teach mathematics in school as well as college, and this base of mathematics formed the foundation for the study of astronomy and astrology both. With this, he wrote a total of 3 books, one of them being Geetarahasya and the other two being Arctic Home of Vedas and the Orion. We are today here to talk about Geetarahasya. Other than his career as a freedom fighter, as a journalist, and as an author, he was a great human being before everything else. And going through his entire life and the journey of his life was one of the most inspiring things that I have done in my life. Just studying his life motivates you like nothing else. And I would like to reverentially bow to the greatness of Mr. Gangadhar Tilak. Now let's begin with our topic for today. Now, before Geetarahasya, let us first understand the concept of Bhagavad Gita. While it is considered as the religious text for Hinduism, just as Bible is for Christianity or Quran is for Islam, the structure or the context is a little bit different. While the other religious texts act more as commandments or guidelines or ethical codes, Bhagavad Gita adopts a slightly different approach. Bhagavad Gita is a discussion between Sri Krishna and Arjun, wherein Sri Krishna takes Arjun through an entire journey about life, morality, ethics, philosophy, duty, and many other topics. The format of Bhagavad Gita is conversational. It is a conversation between Bhagwan Sri Krishna and Arjun, wherein Arjun asks many questions that he faces, and Bhagwan Sri Krishna, in his almighty presence, answers them one by one. In the course of this, there are many concepts which are challenged, and these questions are answered by Bhagwan Sri Krishna. And in the course of this, Arjun gets convinced. The whole Bhagavad Gita is narrated on the eve of the great war on Kurukshetra. Mahabharata, which is the longest epic written in the history of the world, at 100,000 verses or 1 lakh verses. Bhagavad Gita is present in 6th Parva or 6th book of Mahabharata. At 700 verses, it is very small as compared to the entire epic. However, it is said that Maharshi Vyas, who was author of Mahabharata, wanted a concise representation of what he wanted to communicate through the entire epic. And that is why he wrote Bhagavad Gita. Arjun, at the beginning of the war, was perplexed by the thought of having to fight his own kith and kin, his friends, and his loved ones. He became helpless, or he couldn't dare to start this war where he would have to kill his uncles, kith, and other relatives with his own hands. At this time, Bhagwan Sri Krishna imparted the knowledge to Arjun to make him ready for the war. Now let us understand why Mr. Tilak thought of writing this book called Geetarahasya. There had been countless critiques, commentaries, interpretations, and translations of Bhagavad Gita before that. Right from as old as the 8th century critique by Adi Shankaracharya up until the 13th century commentary by Santa Dnyaneshwar, which is more popularly known as Dnyaneshwari. The name that Santa Dnyaneshwar gave was Bhavartha Deepika. All of these commentaries were written by people of unparalleled intelligence and tremendous capabilities. However, what Mr. Tilak found was that all of them were written from a communalistic point of view. What he meant was all of these writers belong to certain sects which we call sampradaya. Now, because they belong to those sects, one of the aims while writing these commentaries was to find agreement with their sect in Bhagavad Gita. It was a tradition that for any sect to find agreement with the society, they had to prove themselves that they are supported by the three pillars of Hindu literature, which was called Prasthanatrayi. These three pillars are Upanishads, Vedanta Sutras, and Bhagavad Gita. While Upanishads and Vedanta Sutras or Brahma Sutras, as they are also called, are clearly Advaiti and renunciative, meaning they are broadly proponents of sannyas. Bhagavad Gita is the only text which promotes or advocates action or the path of action. Now, because Mr. Tilak thought that these texts were communalistic, he found that some verses from Gita were interpreted differently to suit their philosophy or the philosophy of their sects. What Mr. Tilak thought that he must write a book which would explain the entire philosophy of Gita as it was intended by Bhagwan Sri Krishna. And this is why he chose to write. At 900 pages, the book is voluminous. It is not an easy read. But to know that Mr. Tilak wrote this book in 5 months while being imprisoned at Mandale goes to show what a great personality that he was. Other than the length of the book, if you observe the kind of research that Lokmanya Tilak did and the kind of substantiation of all the concepts that he has written, you are nothing but amazed. You find it almost impossible that one person could have done all this work while also being actively involved in the freedom fight or having a political career. Now, let's begin how it is relevant in today's world. Gita Rahasya was written more than 100 years ago. The question is whether it is still relevant in today's world and for today's generation. As I said, let us first understand the practical aspect or how it appeals to the practical mind. Now, I chose to read Gita Rahasya because I have a spiritual bent of mind. While I have a career in sales and marketing field, and I have been working in that field for last 15 years, I also have a keen interest in spiritual inquiry or spiritual pursuits. This made me take up this book, but not everyone need to have this kind of a inclination. So, how it appeals to one of us who wants to know practically how it is going to help us. Bhagavad Gita, while teaching Arjun of why he should go for war, also takes us on a tour of all the facets of this universe. It tells us how one should live or how one should conduct our life. So, for anyone who wants to be happy or blissful, that is the correct word, but for now we will stick to happiness. For someone to be happy and also make a difference to the world that they live in, this book is helpful. How, you may ask? Now, while there are different ways to become happy, one is material happiness, whereas there are some other levels of happiness which go into your mind and soul. If you think about any happiness that you want to achieve, any material happiness for that matter, then it is more often than not at the cost of someone else's happiness. Take an example of money, for example. If you want to earn a lot of money, that means you have to earn profits. When you earn profits, you are charging your customers something more than you should, which means essentially you're robbing them of what your services or products deserve to be charged. Secondly, consider power as one of the things that gives you happiness. If you want power, that happiness you derive from exercising that power over others. So you see, many times when you want to become happy, someone else has to become less happy or has to experience sorrow. However, Bhagavad Gita talks about that kind of everlasting happiness which you can achieve without having to impact anyone else's life. This is the inherent happiness which happens within you. Now let us see how Gita Rahasya appeals to the practical mind. Now, while I took up to read this book for my own personal interest, now I have been working in the corporate world for close to 15 years now. However, I have always had a spiritual inclination, and this is why I took up reading the book. However, for any normal person who doesn't have any spiritual quest, why would such a person read Gita Rahasya or should read Gita Rahasya? Is the question. To this, I would like to say that even if you want to be happy or blissful in life, blissful is the correct word, then you should read Gita Rahasya. Typically, the happiness is at the cost of someone else's happiness. For example, if you take money, if you want to earn more money, this money you will earn from others who are getting deprived of that. Or power, for another example. If you want power, or power is what makes you happy, this power you want to or you should exercise on others. So others are being trodden with your abuse of power. However, Gita tells us about a different kind of happiness wherein you become happy from within. Now, in doing so, you're also making a difference to the world that you live in and making the world a better place. Isn't that something that anybody would like to or love to do? If you are also becoming happy and in doing so, you are also making the world a better place. Isn't it a win-win for everyone? So that path you will understand by going through Gita Rahasya. So while answering Arjun's queries, Gita Rahasya or Bhagavad Gita touches upon all the different aspects of human life, philosophy, ethics, morals, and other factors. In doing so, it not only gives strict guidelines, but it convinces you with substantiation of why you should be doing something that it is telling you to do. Now, human mind is very intelligent. Humans are the most intelligent animals on earth. How we are different from others is in our capability to think, to question, to debate, and deliberate. Bhagavad Gita tackles this particular aspect of human mind in a beautiful way. You would notice that we don't like someone telling us what to do. We don't like something that is thrust upon us, which we are asked to follow. we tend to achieve at our own conclusion by applying our own thoughts, debating what is being told. And only after we are convinced are we willing to implement it in our life. Bhagavad Gita, or rather Gita Rahasya, exactly achieves that. It tells you how you can become happy while also making others happy. And there, it tells you the most important aspect of action without attachment. The most popular verse from Gita, which is the 47th slok or verse in the second adhyaya. I'm sure most of you must have heard about it. Karmanye vadhika raste mak phaleshu kadachana. The second line of it is also equally important. Ma karma phala heturbhu mate sangostva karmani. So this beautifully encapsulates the central message of Gita. And Gita Rahasya talks a lot about this. What this tells you is that while you are entitled to perform any action, you are not entitled to expect the fruits of it. What this means is while you can put everything in while performing any action that you do, if you don't attach yourself to that action, that is the perfect way to do it. It might seem contradictory or paradoxical to some. How, you may ask, should we perform actions without expecting or without being attached to the fruits that you are doing the task for? To which Krishna says that if you attach yourself, then you are bound to be frustrated or get angry if you fail. However, if you only perform the task for the intention of performing it, then you are becoming free from the repercussions of the karma. Now, karma is a very interesting topic, and we might have to go through hours of discussing about karma. But let us quickly understand what karma is. Karma is any action. An action need not be physical. It is physical, mental, or spiritual. So even if you think of doing something, it is a karma. And whenever you do anything with some intent and with an attachment, there are repercussions. The only way which Bhagwan Sri Krishna has told us of performing karma without any repercussions is through nishkama karma, or detached action or selfless action. Sri Krishna tells Arjuna that if you perform this war not for yourself or for your own victory, but because you are trying to make the world a better place by defeating those who are performing injustice, then you are going to be free from the so-called path of killing your own kith and kin. The same way, if you don't attach yourself to whatever you are doing, then you are free from the repercussions. Now, don't get me wrong. This doesn't mean that as long as you are not attached, you are free to do anything. Bhagwan Sri Krishna makes it amply clear, and Mr. Tilak also goes to great lengths to tell the readers that that is not the case. And this is one of the most beautiful parts of the book, and I would urge you to read it even for this particular aspect. Now, in today's modern world, we see that the world is getting closer and closer through globalization and advent of internet. However, we also see that people are going away from each other. What this means is there has been a lack of empathy, consideration, or a thought for others. What Bhagavad Gita or Gita Rahasya tells you to do is to obtain a larger identity. For example, we often see that people are focused on their own happiness and to some extent the happiness of their own family. Bhagavad Gita says that if you expand your identity, then you will naturally work for the betterment of that larger identity. For example, if you have a personal identity, you will only work for yourself. If you consider the entire community as yours, you will work for the betterment of community. People who consider the whole nation as their own, they work for the betterment of the nation. And if you expand the same thing to the entire universe and you achieve a universal identity, Gita tells you that you will naturally work for the welfare of the universe. This is one of the most beautiful messages that Gita gives you on how to live your life practically. Now, let's see how Gita Rahasya appeals to the analytical mind. If you have a keen interest in understanding any concept through in depth study, Gita Rahasya is the book for you. While explaining the meaning of a 700 verse text, which is Bhagavad Gita, made up of 18 adhyayas, Gita Rahasya at 900 pages goes to great lengths to discuss anything and everything around the concepts elaborated on in Gita. Mr. Tilak has gone to great lengths to read and understand all the different treatises on any topic which is even touched upon slightly in Bhagavad Gita. He has gone through global literature. So he gives quotations of German, French, Greek, American, and many other authors or pieces of literature. After considering or deliberating all there is, which is to know about the concept of philosophy, ethics, and life in general, you arrive at certain conclusions. And those conclusions which you have arrived at after such detailed study are bound to make an impact. Like I said, human mind attains conviction only after testing it by themselves. By going through the journey of reading this book, an analytical reader will attain that kind of conviction which would make these pieces of philosophy or ethical guidelines the pillars how they would live their life. Now let's come to the third part of how it appeals to the spiritual mind. And this forms the biggest section. I would talk a little bit about my experience of reading this book. So after I took up reading the book, it took me close to 8 months to read it fully. It is not an easy or a casual read like a novel or a comic book. You can't just sit and read it for 15 minutes and let it go. Whenever I used to sit, I used to ready myself, stabilize my thoughts, and make myself ready to understand the profound concepts that are explained in the book. Even if you have an ounce of spiritual inquiry or spiritual curiosity, I would strongly recommend reading this book. I would go to the extent of saying that if you read this particular book, Gita Rahasya in particular, you don't need to read any other book on Bhagavad Gita, on Hindu philosophy. In fact, for that matter, entire global philosophy is discussed in this. And I'm not exaggerating. Mr. Tilak has touched upon Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity. It also discusses different texts in Hinduism or others and considers the merits and demerits of everything. Let us just quickly go through the structure of the book, which would help you in understanding or appreciating it. Now, it is almost impossible to go through a 900-page book in a matter of, let's say, 9 minutes, but I'll try. So, the book starts off with Vishaya Pravesh or the start of the subject. It tells us why one would be inclined to understand Karma Yoga. The name of the book is Gita Rahasya Athva Karma Yoga Shastra or the doctrine of action oriented path. It explains in great length what karma is and what are the different repercussions of karma. It also elaborates on the meaning of dharma. Now, as we know, dharma is often translated as religion. But let me emphasize that dharma is a much broader term. Dharma comes from a Sanskrit verb of dhru, which means to hold or support. Now, dharma is a way of life and not just a religion. It also includes duty, righteousness, and how one should conduct your life. While discussing dharma or ethics or philosophy, it then considers three different approaches to karma or philosophy. The first approach is adhibhauti, which you can translate as positive or corporeal or physical. Now, what this approach considers is only the physical aspects of anything. So, if you are discussing the repercussions of any action, it will only consider the physical aspects. It perceives the world through what you can perceive through your five senses. Nothing else is given any importance. Naturally, it has a very limited approach, and any ethics or morals based on this approach are bound to be not so exhaustive. Then it considers the adhidaivic approach. Now, this approach is also called theologic or institutionist school of philosophy. I'll give you some examples. This approach considers that there is a deity behind everything. So, there is a deity for justice, which enables a judge to make judgments. There is a deity for rain. There is a deity for sun. In the olden times, the yajna or fire sacrifices which were performed are one of the examples of this approach. The sacrifices were done to appease different deities for rain, sunlight, etc. After human thinkers and philosophers got to know more and more about the universe, they realized that this approach also falls short. And then came the third approach, which is Adhyatmic approach or spiritual approach. This is the most comprehensive approach and the one adopted by Gita. After considering the merits and demerits and proving how the Adhyatmic approach is the most profound one, it then takes up topics which take you to an exciting journey into studying the whole nature of the universe. First, it tells you the nature of permanent and impermanent. It also discusses your body and your soul. Now, then there is a comparative account between these two studies. Now, body is impermanent, whereas soul is permanent. The same way, in the universe, there are many things which are impermanent or short lived. However, there is something which is permanent. Now, it takes us on an exciting journey of how life originated in this universe, how the five basic elements ultimately led to everything that you see today. It tells you that there is only one fundamental principle at the base of the universe, and that is the same fundamental principle which is also the basis of you. Once this identity between these two concepts is attained, it then tells you through explanation how the same soul is present in you as well as the entire universe. There is a very beautiful example given in spiritual studies. If you consider a pot, an earthen pot, and if you see the air contained within, when you are talking about it, you say that this air is different from the air outside. However, once you break the pot, the inside air and the outside air merge with each other. Similarly, when you die, the soul which is within you becomes one with the universal soul. However, the obstruction to this is because of the attachment which we talked about earlier. Because you get attached, This soul also attaches itself to what is called Linga Sharir. Now, when you die, because of all the attachments that you have had to all the actions that you have performed during your life, the soul takes these attached components into your next life as well. And because of that, your soul is not liberated. Bhagavad Gita tells you how to conduct your life in such a way that you perform everything without attachment. And at the end of the life, when you die, your soul will become one with the universe. And in doing so, you also achieve welfare of the entire universe. The beauty of Gita and Gita Rahasya is in that it not only touches upon esoteric principles of spirituality, but it also tells how one should conduct their life. It is very easy to say that we only indulge in knowledge and this materialistic world does not interest me. But Bhagavad Gita is not like that. By reading Gita Rahasya, you would understand how you are supposed to perform or behave while being in this materialistic world and also making a difference to the world that you live in. You not only perform or progress on the journey of achieving moksha or liberation for yourself. In doing so, you are conducting your life in a way that is making the whole universe a better place. We spoke about the universal identity. So, someone who is enlightened, according to Krishna, identifies with the whole universe. They don't have a personal identity anymore. They consider that the whole universe is themselves. What this means is that once they understand that the whole universe is theirs, they perform for welfare of not just humans, but for every single entity in this universe. And you can imagine that once someone behaves or starts to behave in such a way, what greatness is possible. Bhagwan Sri Krishna was a living example of this universal identity. Gita Rahasya also tells you that while there would be very few people who may be able to achieve this identity, it tells you to do your bit in taking you to this epitome that is moksha. It tells you that even little efforts that you take in this life for making your identity broader and broader until you achieve the universal identity, they don't go waste. Sri Krishna tells us that either in this birth or the next, you will achieve liberation. What this means is that if you take yourself to a certain height or in the journey of liberation, you elevate yourself to a certain identity. And if you die, the next birth, you don't start over. The Atma, with the baggage of whatever you have done in this life, begins where you left off. In the next life, you progress further. And in such a manner, you achieve moksha or liberation. This is how Gita Rahasya would appeal to your spiritual mind. I don't know whether I have been able to explain the whole beauty of the book that Gita Rahasya is. But if you choose to read it yourself, you will understand what I was trying to communicate. I was, in fact, so impressed by reading this book that I chose to write a book of my own. I have written a book called A Critique of Gita Rahasya, which is around 500 pages. Now, I had one goal in my mind when I chose to write this book. I knew that reading a 900-page book written in Marathi would find fewer and fewer takers, with every modern parents trying to put their children in English medium schools. To understand this book was a difficult task for me as well. So I thought that I should take efforts to write my own version of it trying to encapsulate all the concepts in Geetarahasya and present it in contemporary English. Why I'm telling you this is that is how good the book is. I am 100% convinced. But I would be happier if more and more people take up the task of getting to know Bhagavad Gita and Gita Rahasya from up close and by themselves. We are very fortunate to have been blessed with such good literature. Even if a few percentage of you audience is interested in taking this further, there is a course which Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapit is starting from 19th of August, which is a certificate course on Gita Rahasya, which you are welcome to take up. And for that, you can speak with the concerned authorities of Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapit. I would like to thank Geetali Madam and everyone else for giving me this opportunity to talk with such an educated audience as you about the topic that I love the most. If you are interested, Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapit is also starting a new course, a certificate course on Gita Rahasya from 19th of August. I would be glad if more and more of you people take up this course and begin your own study in Gita Rahasya. If you have any further topics to discuss or any queries about today's session, I would request the authorities to mention my email ID where you can reach me, communicate with me in any way you want to. I would like to thank the audience for bearing with me through this long session. Thank you so much. Om.